Hey, Shalom, Esoteric Duvidism here. Got back with Brundlefly for the show we've been saying we were going to do on immigration, trying to increase the intellectual content of these shows. And this is relatively going to be pretty autistic. We're going to be looking through a lot of statistical reports about migration to the United States, exactly where do people come from, how many are coming there, what are the trends, and a lot of this is going to be very numerical, which to some extent is mine and Brundlefly's expertise, is these charts and numbers. And before we get into it, I'm not sure if content is watching. Brundle, if you want to just make any comments you had interest on any random topic.
Okay, so before we get into last night's chat, there are a couple things. So Halsey messaged me today, and Halsey is interested in setting up a debate between you and his son, CV. In all seriousness. And he was like, what did I think the debate would be about? I had thrown out some things like, what would you probably would agree with CV about multiculturalism. You would probably disagree about sexual deviancy, like transsexualism, homosexuality, but I don't think I've actually heard you talk about that. So
yeah, I'm not sure if it makes any sense. It's like, those aren't my specialties. I prefer to talk about what I know. So I'm not sure if there's really a debate. Like,
what about race realism?
Well, I mean, if we'd be debating evolution in essence, because she's an evolutionist.
And she also believes in the social construction of race.
I might agree with that also. I mean, to at least more than you guys do.
Yeah.
But yeah, to me, I'm not really looking forward to that debate. I'm not sure, Halsey's trying to.
Okay, no, that's fine. I
mean, if it was a conversation, or it's certainly on my channel. I don't know if I want to bring that on my channel. Maybe if Halsey's inviting me to do that on his channel.
I think that would be probably on a JF or a Wars. That would be another big, high-profile conversation.
Yeah, I mean, possibly. I mean, she seemed like she was, actually more popular than I was on.
I think no one likes CV. I think you would be a hero to defeat CV.
Yeah, and she might have more. I'm not sure that if like debating an Orthodox Jew would be in my advantage on that issue. It's possible, but it's not my area of expertise. It'd have to be like what topic and in what sense does it make like for me to be debating CV on these random issues that aren't my specialty.
Yeah, no, that's fair. I just, he asked me about it, and I said I would bring it up to you and see if there was a topic that it would make sense for. You know what I'm saying? So maybe think about it tonight, and we'll talk.
Yeah, is Analytic debating Big Cat Kayla tonight or something?
Oh, like that's another thing. So Analytic is. I told her I was like, Analytic, use your phone. Like, you're not hosting the debate, so you can just call in. You know what I mean? And she is refusing to do it. Kayla is calling her out for, she's like, you've had 48 hours to go buy a $10 mouse. Apparently it's her mouse that's down or something. And I even, like, Analytic offered me up as like a replacement to debate Big Cat Kayla. But Kayla is balking at the idea of debating me on pretty much any subject. Probably.
What would you debate about? I mean, the whole thing, like, are you a debater? Like, I'm not really like that big into debate. I'm more, autistic, like presentation. I thought last night was possibly the best content I'd ever given. With all those presentations in terms, the debates are more popular, but that's more my style. And then, if it's something Jewish, obviously that's. I'm more likely to debate that than just I'm gonna be just on these streams randomly to be debating random topics. It doesn't seem like me. I'm not sure if that's you either.
Well, it's not so much. I mean, I can have an argument about a topic. It wouldn't. I mean, and what would I debate her about? I don't know. I mean, originally they were going to do ethno-nationalism versus civic nationalism. Now I can't I'm not a civic nationalist, so I'm not really going to take that, but I've offered to take the position that like an 80% white country would be ideal as opposed to like the ideal of 100% white ethno state. And Kayla said that she doesn't agree with the 100% white ethno state. She thinks it's a pipe dream. So, I mean, I was also offered to, I don't know. I don't think she really wants to debate me. Let me put it that way. And I was thinking about it, I don't know that it's necessarily in my advantage because, like, for a guy, not that if I was to, let's say, win, it would look like a guy beating up on a girl.
And it's probably actually going to be kind of boring. It'd be like alt hype in frame games. Two people, neither one showing their face, neither one that anybody really knows who they are.
No, it's really true. What do you mean?
So
no
CV, I guess.
Hype or frame game are. Oh, you mean their real identity?
Yeah, so even CV is more interesting and more popular than any of those people. Because I mean, she's a real identity. She's got papers. You could see her name, and even she's not the prettiest person or whatever, but at least there's a face to it and a real name.
Yeah, I think are you mispronouncing using the wrong pronoun for him?
I don't know. I mean, that's I wouldn't even have brought it up. It's not interesting to me. Like people are mentioning the chat, Jan Dyer. Like that's more.
I think Jay Dyer would be perfect for you.
Yeah, that's more interesting to me. Like something like that, or something I know something about, or and it might not really be a debate because we might just share knowledge and discussion.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you did do that, like I think what we're going to do right now is going to be pretty interesting to the actual factual element of the debate, civic nationalism versus ethnic nationalism, or if you're concerned like what's in the realm of possibilities. So you have to know the current state of what's the law, what are the proposals, what are the statistics on the ground right now.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you had content on the chat last night. Like to me, like I don't know if content's there. Like it seemed kind of pathetic. Like I wasn't really following the chat as I was doing it, but it seemed kind of like pathetic. He was like begging Brundlefly to talk to him, and I was like, why? Like it didn't make any sense to me, and that's why I partially wanted to distance myself from the Lucosphere and try to get rid of that degeneracy and.
What exactly? Because I just saw brief snippets of it, but what was happening? Like in your view?
I was talking pure autism. There was some commentary on the content, and then it degenerated into basically like content begging Brundlefly to direct message him, and like went on for like an hour, and it was like, and like I was surprised she came to. Yeah, I could see that. Like I mean, good for her. She she said she wants to be a surgical assistant. Maybe she'll up her goals, and actually want to be a doctor or something, and. Watching my autism or something might be benefit to increase her intellect. And last night it was pure presentation style, and I had like a lot of good slides. And then afterwards, I'm reading the chat, and I was like, "Oh my God, that's what these people were talking about during my presentation." And even other people in the chat, there was like, "Come on, like what the hell are you monopolizing the chat space with this nonsense? Like we're trying to learn about." The soul and philosophy and the scientific method, and there's like 100 comments in the dominating the chat on this degeneracy.
Is this my fault somehow?
Yeah, I mean it's probably related. That's why I said like you were talking. Oh, okay, am I banned from the Lucosphere? Is he going to have me on his new channel? I was like, I'm probably better off staying in my lane, staying away, because it's just going to lead to that degeneracy coming onto my channel. So even like, am I better off talking to just a handful of people who take what I'm saying seriously than people are just showing up in the chat to have like gossip and degeneracy that's almost not connected at all to what I'm saying. In almost all of my streams, I'm like reading the chat, and there's like almost nothing to do with what I'm talking about.
Well, that is how that happens. That happens pretty much everywhere. Honestly, it's almost like there's two things happening. There's the show that we put on, right? And that conversation goes a certain direction. And then the chat, half the chat is having its own conversation where basically it's a space for people that know each other to congregate and talk about whatever, right? Then the other half is people that listen, and every once in a while somebody on the stream says something that like changes the direction of the chat, but it's not like a constant reaction to what's happening. And so, I saw that last night, and I saw, a couple people were interested in talking to Butterfly. And to be honest, like, I'm not even sure what they're so pressed about. I mean, trust me, guys, like, she's a real dog. So I don't know what everyone's.
Whatever the case is, like, it's like the one woman in the chat or something, like the 5-10% of the people who watch my chat that might show up my channel, that are females. And I mean, if it was like a university classroom, it'd be even worse. And like, I remember suffering, from my own desires of sins of the flesh in university, especially in, real university where you have like half-dressed women all day, every day, all over the place. And you're trying to focus, and especially when it's really complicated stuff that requires focus. And then at the same time, there's like parties and sororities and all this other stuff. And so I was more academic and basically like a nerd in university, and saying like, even on YouTube with like people hiding behind fake identities, it's like, come on, it makes me I like idolize and finally look back at my yeshiva all boys Jewish schools, where we just studied Talmud all day, and it was all boys, and it was very serious. Like, there was practically no degeneracy. Like, wasting time talking about politics or something was considered wasting time, let alone to just the pure degeneracy that fills university and even my YouTube chat.
Yeah, I mean,
even like a legitimate question.
Do you think it's?
I don't have a legitimate question for anybody that I would need to private message anyone from my shows. Like, I don't really know who anybody is. Like, you're like my study partner. Hopefully we're going to get into this, and I can say like, okay, I value you as my study partner, and like, doesn't even matter who you really are, what your real name is, what you do in real life. Maybe not, saying we're just study partners. And like, but like, no, I got to DM you. Like, I really got something important to tell you in private. And I've never felt that way with anything. And even like JF, when I was on a show, like, you want to coordinate this a little bit beforehand. And like him, not so much. Like, he doesn't seem, he's too much into like big writing and long messages, or
busy man.
Well, I mean, you're a busy person, but he's saying like let's organize the show, what we're going to talk about, how it's going to be structured. And we talked about that a little bit, but it was pretty like terse and just the facts and to the point. And that's how it reminds me now I was in university, saying if me and you were taking the same public policy course, and we have a big report to do on immigration, and we had to study the statistics and meet, it'd be, pretty terse, just like, where are we going to meet? What are we going to talk about? What's the schedule? And, then it's like, no, I really got to talk to you in private. Like, about what? Like, even people ask me like that. I was like, what can you like mind your own business? What do you need to know? I said, what's that have to do with, and whatever the case, I understand.
Well, do you think, I mean, because last night, right? I mean, you would say that were you saying the boys were poorly behaved?
Well, I mean, it wasn't like, I did see I have the Google like self-censor on where the Google's censoring out comments, and I was looking through, maybe there's like 10-15 comments that were censored by Google that was showing me. And yeah, I'm like, all seriousness, and like I think like even God forbid, like, in discipline days where someone got slapped or something, it's like, you're like, we are going to be putting our full attention into immigration statistics now. There is no room to talk about anything else. Just like, keep that stuff outside. And that's how it was when I was in rabbinic school. It was like, now we're going to be learning Talmud. Anything you guys want to discuss with each other about anything else, take that outside. And even though, it's a waste of your time, your life is going to pass you by, you're going to turn into a loser and not amount to anything because you're not serious enough. And to me, like, I like that extremely high discipline And to me, that's why, like, I'm a conservative. You know, it's like alt-right. Like, I have extreme conservative values.
So do you think though that like do you think it was the presence of the woman that like drives the men mad? Like when you were yeshiva, there was no women around,
Yeah,
right?
there's no women, and it was like just a given that um, it was all, you know, there'd be marriage and proper morality, and people were learning God's law, and it was like a given that people wanted to prescribe to God's law, and like, you know, there would be no consideration of even dating except for the purpose of getting married, and even within marriage there'd be strict following of the biblical law. There was no degeneracy. I made that point many times now, you know, like the show the other night, like people who never made a dirty joke their whole adult life. You know, the time I was in rabbinic school, none of the rabbis, none of the senior leaders ever made a dirty joke. And it was saying in public or private, and if they did, like, they would lose their job. I mean,
Yeah.
so that's just like, you don't do that. It's impossible.
Yeah, I mean, particularly in a religious institution like that. I mean, there's definitely a
I can't enforce that. Like I went over the other night the um, laws of you know, hate speech, you know, lashon hara, bad speech, what you can and can't say, and that's not like governmental. Like the government should enforce that, and even from the halakhic Jewish law point of view, those aren't enforceable. It's just like according to someone who wants to fulfill God's will, that's how a person should do it. You know, it's not, there might be like shunning and embarrassment, and we talked about that last night. So I wasn't talking like repealing the First Amendment, but just talking about like, do you want to be a good person? Or like Norvin when he said like I could be much worse, and it's like that's a defense, saying like you should desire to be better.
yeah. No, I hear you. And I just, you know, for the record, I want to say that I think my opinion of what transpired last night is you know,
But, I mean, there was nothing horrible. Like I'm not
there
saying,
was
like,
nothing horrible. Nobody was.
I didn't even consider like, you know, banning someone, or like those comments. I could have really let all the comments that Google, you know, flagged. I really could have let them all go up, but like I didn't let any of them go up because like who cares?
Yeah.
But you know, so it wasn't like anything like punishable. But like to me, it's just like, you know, pay attention. Like, you know, like, don't you take your life seriously?
Yeah. No. Look, I hear. I guess what I'd say is, you know, I like Brundlefly. I like Tom.
Well, I like everybody. I'm
I
saying,
like Content Watcher. I like everybody. I think maybe there was just some fun being had that I guess you would qualify as degenerate.
Well, can it be like best behavior also? And that's what I'm saying. Like, when I want to separate myself from the, you know, Lucasphere, so to say, and like people like, okay, you're on my channel. I'm a serious man. I'm a religious man, and I would prefer if you're on your best behavior here, in that sense. And like, okay, if it's someone like Norvin who comes from a broken family, and he doesn't really have a best behavior mode, and I spoke to him about that. It's like, don't you ever, you know, like God forbid you're in court or something, or something, you know, don't you have a best behavior mode? You know, like your grandparents are there. It's a family event. It's a university event. It's a business event. You know, you're going to be on your best behavior, and you know, a lot of people, I guess, they don't even have that mode where they could, you know, comply to like, I'm going to be on my best behavior for at least a short period of time.
Yeah, absolutely. And it looks like Content Watcher wants to come on and atone for his sins. Do you want to send him a link, or you want me to, or is that?
I don't know which email. If you want to send it to him, that's fine.
I'll send it to him real quick.
And I'm going to let this other person come on just to, you know, like I do want to do these immigration statistics. This truth-seeking person, I gave them the
That's
link.
him. That's him.
Oh, that is him.
I sent it to him.
And you know, that's also weird too. Like, what the hell is that? You have to keep on changing your identity. Like,
Why don't you? That's a great question.
I thought that was someone else.
Ask him that right now. Re-ask that question.
And even Butterfly was saying that, like, what's up with you? You got to keep on changing your identity. And like, I'm not your judge or anything like that.
Content, are you here? Content, your mic. You might want to leave and come back.
Yeah, I'm a live and let live guy, and I'm usually like a God, like more libertarian. God will be your judge, and not me. And but you're like the freedom of association, and to say like, you're like, you were on that show with Obsidious or whatever. I don't associate with people who have potty mouths like that generally. If it was business or something, construction, yeah, like most people in construction have potty mouths, and I could do business a little bit, and just as long as you do your job and do your work right, okay, whatever, I could put up with your potty mouth in the workplace a little bit. But like general on a personal association level, I don't have close friends that talk like that. And content, like he didn't have a potty mouth. Like I'm saying, God forbid, I'm not claiming that. It just seemed like, like what's he bring that to my chat for? It's like, okay, like, and saying, I don't know. Like to me, it was like, I mean, if he wants to come on and defend himself or talk.
Right, let me just defend myself for a second. It's so funny. The thing is, first of all, I mean, I legitimately showed up last night to learn some stuff. And then, I mean, and listen, David, you did a great service to the internet last night. That was an awesome show. But I'm just speaking like personally, is that I took, at least 2 graduate level classes in that stuff where I took 16-week, 16-week classes on like all of that. And so it's like you're kind of going real fast. I think it's a good survey that you did, but there wasn't the depth that I was looking for last night. And I would love to do we should do a deep dive on any one of those slides sometime. But so I was just in the chat hanging because like we do that every day.
Well, it's like I don't do that every day. I don't hang in chats. Well, so I've been saying that's why I'm kind of want to separate myself from the Lucasphere. Because saying like, no, I don't hang out. Like I never hang out. Like to me, hanging out is a waste of time.
I mean,
I'm not your judge in that matter. But to me, it's like, okay, so you're just hanging out in my chat. Like you don't want to contribute to the content, and therefore you're gonna, at least more on the side of degeneracy than contribution. Well, I wasn't even considered like doing anything about it, but like it was mentioned, and like we could talk it through, or something like that, and say if it wasn't interesting, don't you have something better to do with your time?
No, okay, listen. First of all, no. It's the summer. I just finished teaching. I'm off. These are my buddies. But like, I just want to say for real, I was listening. I can do 2 things at once. And the thing that started this is that fucking Brundle, told me that Butterfly had some thoughts about the conversation I had the night before with Luke. And I think of her as being as close to a normie as we have in these chats. And it wasn't my impression that I like demolished Luke or whatever she said to him. So I did want to ask her that. And I also believe that having those kind of conversations with some girl in the chat like takes away from what's going on. So it seemed legitimate for me to say DM me. And then she started acting like a weirdo. And so like it became we got derailed. And Tom was giving it to her and it became funny to me. But David, let me just say, I'll never do that again. I didn't realize it was bothering you at all.
Well, it didn't bother me. I didn't even notice it till the next day when I looked at it. And then I was looking at it, but I think, is it possible that there's other people who could have had more benefit out of it?
Sure.
And are you kind of like the arrogant intellectual that you're saying, like, I'm not going to help you people understand this topic. I'm just here, like, God forbid, to hit on a younger woman. It's like, okay, like you're like hanging out, and the undergraduates are really scratching their heads to try to get to this stuff, and you pop into the study hall, and everybody's like, oh, can you help me out? Can you answer this question? And he's like, no. And then you go straight to like hitting on the one girl there.
That is true. That is a fair criticism, and I am sorry.
And I was in university. I'm saying like that's how it works, unfortunately. And my father was always strict. Like I was always like you're not here to make friends. Like you're here to learn something. You're paying a lot of money for this. Life is going to pass you by. You want to be successful. Like friends aren't going to help you. Like being popular, having friends, or being cool. That's not going to help you get ahead.
I agree, man. It's just that it's like I was raised in Babylon, and it's like I don't think you appreciate.
We talked about this before, like flirting type behavior.
Yeah, it's hard.
Like Indian culture or ultra Orthodox culture, there is no such thing as flirting.
Right.
And it's saying, but like you were saying, like that's Western culture, and you're expected to flirt. And to me, that's just degenerate, but relatively to broader society. And that's what it's like you guys are saying, I'm not alt-right, I'm not conservative. Like those are classic conservative values.
It's a good point, but like, I mean, I basically think we should kick women then, because everyone in the chat like gets thrown off by these women who come in these circles.
Well, hold on, I have a question.
You got to control yourself.
Hold on, guys. There's a question in the chat. Does Butterfly get any credit for resisting the degeneracy?
Well,
that's
good for her. I mean, thanks for coming back to my channel. I guess if she's here and like, and I wanted to talk. I wanted to do like an autistic stream on immigration statistics. I'm ready to go with that. And
okay, I'm getting off.
If this was the Lucosphere, the whole show could be like just
right.
talking about this. Basically.
Well, I think it needed addressing because of how you felt about it, and
yeah. And I don't mind like the Lucosphere. I'm not trying I wasn't happy his channel got a strike, and I wish him the best. And there might be some venue for that, but like keep that for the Lucosphere somewhere else.
Yeah, I will.
That's not what I'm trying to do here.
I will. And Butterfly should change her picture to the Virgin Mary, I think, going forward.
I'm not going to tell people and saying if she's coming to my channel, I think these immigration statistics are interesting, and we could learn something. But yeah, I mean, you want to that's what we said, like you and Norvin, like you got your own channel.
Yeah. I left a bunch of good comments there last night in between the stuff with Butterfly. She left
did. Like I saw some of that, and I appreciate that. And that's why I gave the comparison to what actually happens in university. And like people like you are more the norm than me. But to some reason, like there's a reason why people like me get ahead financially and it's not necessarily like Jewish nepotism. It's because you look back and like I didn't waste my time with that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Well, you guys have fun. I gotta scram. I appreciate it. See ya.
See you, man. All right. So, do you want to any closing thoughts before we move on?
Yeah, I mean, somehow this took like almost 30 minutes. Like I want to do like pure statistics. I'm not sure. Like it's funny. Truth. He was DMing me on Twitter, and I didn't even know who he was because he kept on changing his account. I thought it was just someone random. He was like, "Who is this random person that wants to get on?" And I didn't even realize it was the same person because he keeps on changing his handle. And I don't know. Jonathan Pohl wants to come on. I'm not sure if Jonathan has any expertise. Like I want to get straight into some numbers. So let me put it to presentation mode and go through a few of these. And if there are people that legitimately have something to share on the topic, let's do it. So maybe we'll start with the quick Pew Survey, because the Pew Surveys they're going to be about the easiest thing to understand that we do today. And so here, can you see my key facts about U.S. immigration policy and proposed change?
Yep.
Okay.
So who is the source here? This is Pew.
Yeah, Pew's pretty good, and like we're going to do other stuff. Like Pew is there's better stuff than Pew. So here's just saying
70% chain migration.
Yeah, and saying that's something that Trump is looking to end, and we're going to look where if you want it all white people, or what we're talking about like Indian foreign workers, and we got some data like how much Asian high IQ people are adding to U.S. society, and a lot of the family-sponsored immigrants. They could we'll have to look for the breakdown, and like I have some charts that are just like pure numbers, not even any graphics or anything, like pure numbers, and hopefully we're gonna be able to look at those. So you're just saying your different types of visa, diversity visa program, refugees. So if it was like Trump
would get rid of almost 80% of immigration if he had it
only be employee-based immigrants, basically.
Yeah.
Maybe some of the family-sponsored immigrants. I'm not sure. Like some of those would be able to, but basically the only thing that would stay would be this employment-based immigrants. And here's the breakdown of H-1B visas. So in 2016,
these are the employment visas.
Yeah, the high-skilled workers, 180,000.
Wait, so hold on. This does not add up. Hold on, if you scroll up again real quick. I mean, I'm seeing about 500,000, right? That is 137,000. So that's green cards. So that's permanent residency, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so So
Now
within 1 year, so the 1 year 2016, it's about 1 million green cards.
Yeah, as opposed to H-1B1 visas don't necessarily.
They're temporary employment visas, and this is another 310, 440, half 750,000 temporary visas annually.
Yeah, so let's say there'd be two ways to doing it. Like when I talk about multiculturalism, is where you could X the immigrants on the first chart, get rid of the family migration, the diversity lottery, and the consider if you don't like refugees or not, and then you could start increasing green cards for the high skilled workers. So hopefully we'll talk about it because a lot of these people don't have a good path to citizenship, and it affects the labor markets to have these high skilled workers that are getting paid less than the average person in America to do the same work. So, the H-1B visas, and let's say you want to increase H-1B visas to 500,000 or something, and you want to give half of those people a path to citizenship. That'll also be something to consider.
Well, so let me ask you, why
that'd be like the Mike Bloomberg approach.
Why do we have
Mayor Bloomberg approach?
Why you connected getting rid of chain migration with increasing the number of employment visas?
Well, saying if you just wanted to keep the numbers equal.
If you, I mean, would you want to? I mean, why do we need to? I mean, is it just that you're just throwing that out there as a possibility?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, so we don't have to discuss like possible policy till later. Let's look at some numbers, and we could throw in some here. So here we have
these are refugees.
Yeah, and you say like really El Salvador, Haiti, very few of them are actually coming from the Middle East. 7,000 from Syria, that's it. And most of these are coming from Central America.
Yeah.
A handful.
I know, like the Honduras. I mean, I think Honduras had like a earthquake at one point.
And that's actually interesting. That Honduras is expiring today, July 5th. So that's actually today that the temporary protected status for Honduras expires.
Right, but he's going to renew that one for whatever reason.
Trump is renewing it.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that's it with the first one. Like these Pew ones, just to get into looking at data. This one's about Europe, this Pew survey. So let's look at this infographic. So I'll try to keep people. We'll look at the infographics that have nice charts first, and then it's going to get the other ones are going to be pure numbers. So lawful permanent residents, and most of the data isn't ready for 2017, so we're still looking at 2016. Lawful permanent residents of 2016, there were 1,183,505 new lawful permanent residents in the fiscal year 2016. And you can see the chart going back to 1916 and the spike in 1989 to 1991, reflecting the legalization of 2.7 million unauthorized immigrants under the Immigrant Reform Control Act of 1986, if you remember that. Under Reagan.
So this is a lot of graphics. So
we basically, I'm going to scroll down, but you see.
So no, 1960. Let's take the first section, right? So between 1930 and like 1945, there was almost none.
And that was due to the wars, and like we had quite a bit of a few 100,000 a year immigrants, in the early 1900s, and then during the war they had the extreme difficulties, and the government made special policies to limit immigration till after World War II, and then it goes back to about normal till 1965, and then it starts increasing slowly and steadily till now. It's been over 1 million immigrants a year for over 10 years. Really like averaging 1 million immigrants a year since the late 80s.
Yeah, and those are new. I mean, that's a shit ton of people.
Yeah, but that's enough to change the
demographics.
Million.
Yeah,
we're talking
if we're going back from 86 to 2016, I mean, that looks like about 1 million a year. I mean, that's 30 million people.
That's 10% of America, and then let alone those people have more kids than American citizens on average. So that, with the kids that they've had, that might be like 50 million people. It's like 15% of America. So, that's what I wanted people, who are to some extent, immigration, I think, is the biggest issue right now in the alt-right, especially because most of what the alt-right is talking about has no legitimacy in regular right-wing politics, except for immigration. There's a big push, big division within the legitimate right, the institutional right, however you want to call it, on immigration. And so the alt-right people who most of their policy no one cares about, immigration is the one thing where the alt-right might be able to win over the institutional right on, and that President Trump is more likely to give heed to.
Yeah.
Here we got the statistics by region of birth. Obviously, 39% from Asia, 36% from North America. Most of those are coming from Mexico.
Right.
I'm not sure, immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, that's 48% of immigrants are through family chain migration. Almost half of the people coming to the U.S. get here because they have a family member here.
Yeah, like none of them, like the only ones, like if you look at...
Even more, I'm saying, I guess if you add immediate relatives of U.S. citizen to family-sponsored preference, that's almost 70% of all immigrants.
Yeah. I mean, the only one where only Europe and Oceania are the only ones where employment-based preference even hits like the top two.
Yeah, I have other statistics. I mean, you're going to see that European and Asian immigrants are relatively benefiting America in terms of science and wealth increasement. So a lot of people, you're talking.
Yeah,
Mexico.
it's interesting. Like, okay, so if we go with our annual like million a year, right? And if
you look, there's only 12% employment base, 10% refugees. So if President Trump wanted to change these kind of statistics around, and he wants 50% employment based, and there's got to be a big cut on relatives, and you're going to vastly increase, if you just cut out the families and keep the employment ones about the same, or even to increase the amount of employment citizenship.
Yeah. Well, I'm just thinking like, like if you got rid of everything except like sort of what we're doing with maybe that 100,000 a year of like, I don't know. Have you ever heard of the guy, John Derbyshire? He used to write for National Review. He does like a weekly radio show for VDare.com. It's a British guy. Yeah, so his opinion is like you shouldn't get into this country unless like you're the absolute top of your field, like the best of the best. Like we don't need like IT workers. We need like true like not someone who just like logs people's hold on. Like not someone who just like changes people's passwords and stuff like that, but like if you're actually someone who like could invent a social network or invent something, or if you're a Nobel Prize tier thinker or scientist, but like we don't need like grunts.
Well, you could argue that and saying like, I mean, let's say, do you really want to make it more difficult for relatives of U.S. citizens to be able to come here? And wherever a person comes from, and just say, I'm sorry, your relatives, it's not going to be so easy to just, come here and then bring all your relatives here. And if that were the case, saying the employment-based visa in citizenship is pretty small. It's only 10%. And so, you're talking about limiting that. That's not going to even come close to solving the problem. You could talk about that issue, but that's not the main issue. The main issue is family of U.S. citizens, and especially chain migration, where one person gets in and then they bring over their family, and then they get like a whole tribe, hundreds of people here. Within the employment, you could argue that actually we could increase that from all levels. If there's other people in other places that could fulfill jobs that are needed here in America, let's bring them over, whether, no matter what the case is, if they're nurses, if they're mid-level IT, and just say, we need them. There's open jobs.
Because the thing is like with that kind of stuff, the thing is with that kind of stuff is like there's a supply and demand where those people, like, if those jobs aren't getting filled, right, then there is sort of a disconnect between the price of labor. Like the price of labor needs to go up for whatever that is. Like in some ways, like by bringing these workers in, you are negatively impacting like the workers that are here. And another thing is like I saw some statistics. I don't know if this is going to be present in any of the data we're going to review, but that we graduate more STEM people than there are jobs, and yet there's still this argument that we need to bring in foreign labor. Because the other thing about these H-1B visas is that employers apply for the visa. They cost like $20,000 or $30,000 each to process. Okay. And then they essentially control the person.
Let's not spend too much time talking about employment-based visas, especially, I mean, it is worthy of talking. We should talk about it, but let's just notice that's less than 12%. So I mean, you're focusing on that. That's not the bulk of immigrants to America. So like, however much you talk about that, that's only a small portion of what you might consider the immigration problem. So I mean, you're just in agreement, like it should become significantly harder for all the others.
Yeah, I guess where I disagree.
The only question on this whole chart is the employment-based preference. All the others should be drastically cut, and you don't even mind if they're cut to zero.
Right.
Except for the employment-based preference, and if it's like President Trump,
which there is like in art, like I think that is the one thing I'm willing to like argue about in a sense. Like the other ones are sort of no-goes for me. You know what I mean? Like the numbers are so massive, like it just can't happen.
Like President Trump said on Muslims, really he should have just said an immigration moratorium, period, not just Muslims. And we're talking like we need an immigration moratorium in America besides for employment-based immigration, period.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm saying these are just the infographics that are easy to understand. So here's refugees. So that we have refugees and asylees. So I'd say refugees. Where are they coming from in 2016? So we got Congo, Syria, Burma, Iraq, and Somalia. And this doesn't include what we had in the other chart with the special status from Central America. I guess those aren't actually considered refugees.
Yeah.
And then the
these are all from countries that suffer cognitive deficits relative to the natural or to the native population. I think some would argue it's genetic. You would argue it's spiritual.
Yeah, or environmental, and but either case, you're talking like our 200,000 employment H-1B ones, and only like in between, only a little over 100,000 people are getting in who are workers. Let alone So here you got 85,000 refugees and another 20,000 asylees, either affirmative or defensive asylees. And I don't know the difference. If anyone in the chat, I'm not looking at the chat, so I could leave this open and people can see the infographic. But if someone knows the difference and wants to inform the chat what the difference between affirmative and defensive asylees are.
Affirmative. Yeah, is the footnote? Can you go to the footnote from that? It says one, or is that the footnote itself?
Yeah, I don't see the footnote at the bottom. Or is it at the top? No. I don't know if there's a footnote. I don't see it.
All right, let's keep going. So credible fear, top states. Okay, this is an interesting one. So the question of where these people go, right?
Oh, here it is. One affirmative affirmatively through U.S. citizenship and immigration services, defensively before an immigration judge of the executive office or immigration review of the Department of Justice. So I don't know exactly what those bureaucratic differences are. In 73% of the screenings. So I guess the U.S. actually screens these people in El Salvador, Guatemala, and the Honduras. That we actually have offices and immigration centers down there in Central America. And maybe someone knows more about this, but we don't have to spend so much time with the stuff we don't understand. But we know that there is more to look into. And obviously the government, the U.S. federal government's a huge beast, and we might have huge centers there in Central America we don't even know about. So let's see the top states of initial resettlement. Actually, Michigan is up there as number 4. Detroit. That's why I'm saying, like, I know the policy here in Detroit. Like, we're really friendly to immigrants here. If anyone noticed, I just clicked on Facebook, and it was someone inviting me to an immigration protest. Pro-immigration protest. Families shouldn't be separated.
Yeah.
So you got, so here we've made it extremely friendly. Maybe Ohio, that people would come all the way to Michigan. Like obviously California and Texas.
Well, Michigan. I mean, a lot of those are Muslims. There's definitely like a Muslim enclave building in Michigan. Now, the thing I wanted to point out about that, I mean, none of those are on that state, but are on that list is the top 5. Because obviously there's sort of an absolute magnitude of population that's going to make those bigger. But, the idea of sending Somalians to places like Idaho and Maine seems absolutely ridiculous. And that's something they're doing. They're sort of like seeding diversity. I mean, as you've said, like, I think we sort of disagree on the idea of multiculturalism on the broad scale of the United States. But I think you've said many times, like, you don't understand, or you sympathize with, 98% white communities and the need to, or, like, why would the federal government be like seeding them with foreigners?
Yeah. So, I mean, here in Michigan, most of these people are coming to Metro Detroit, and we want them here. Overwhelmingly of the demographic here, we're very friendly to that. Here, and as I said, these are official Department of Homeland Security statistics. So obviously California and Texas each are getting like 10% of the immigrants. In New York, 6%, because those are natural immigration entry points. I mean, Michigan through Canada maybe, but I doubt they're coming through Canada. They're probably coming because the policy is set up here very favorably. So here's naturalization, similar to the naturalization process confers U.S. citizenship upon foreign citizens or nationals who have fulfilled the requirements established by Congress in the Immigration and Naturalization Act. After naturalization, foreign-born citizens enjoy nearly all the same benefits, rights, and responsibilities that the Constitution gave to native-born U.S. citizens, including the right to vote. Naturalization numbers presented include N400 applicants age 18 and up. So I guess this is different. Naturalization is different than citizenship. So on top of like the million per year of the citizens, you got another close to 1 million per year coming through naturalizations. And here, a lot of those India, China, and obviously the most are coming from Mexico. But here you see 6% from India, 5% from Canada, and I don't know, the 5.5% is that the Philippines?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then you got Cuba, another 4% naturalizations. Yeah. It's actually interesting that 56% of naturalizations are female.
Yeah, that's well.
And you think how
so
long?
So naturalization or citizenships, correct?
They're not like a full citizenship. They're allowed to vote. They're like a naturalized citizen.
No, naturalization is citizenship, because you see it as the bottom. Persons naturalizing in 2016 spent a median of 7 years in lawful permanent resident status before becoming citizens.
But this is in addition to what we showed at top, lawful permanent residents.
So yeah, this is the conversion of lawful permanent residents to citizens.
Okay, so of the permanent residents, close to 75% of them become citizens.
Yeah. Hey, just so real quick, before we move to the next page, I will be debating Big Cat Kayla tonight.
And Analytic Chicks Place?
Yeah. On House of Faust. I think we're going to be talking about the role of right-wing Jews, and it's been agreed upon that there's going to be no rules. So I assume that means like it's going to get a little ugly.
Yeah, okay. I mean, so this will be good preparation for just maybe somewhat to just be, more factual. So here you have, saying because, immigration and multiculturalism is in the alt-right is one of the biggest complaints against Jews. And statistically, like if you're talking like media control or banking, that doesn't apply to most Jews. Most Jews are not part of the control of media. However, most Jews do favor immigration and multiculturalism.
Yeah.
So here your top 5 state of residence, this is much higher. There, California 20%, New York 12%, Florida 12%, Texas 8.5%, New Jersey. So I mean, here you're saying California is taking a bulk, like 1/5 of
all new citizens.
Yeah.
Yeah, and especially the Texas thing. I mean, that's what's going to drive. Assuming that immigrants wait until they become citizens to vote, which is not always a guarantee, but I mean, that definitely contributes to the change of Texas from red to blue.
Yeah, I mean, and California is already done. That's already, that their whites are already a minority in California, I think. So immigration system, non-immigrated admissions, I-94 or 94W. So these are just like tourists, I guess, or people that spend a little bit of time here. And actually, there's 77 million people that.
I wonder, does like a
temporary.
So non-immigrants. So on scroll. Is this definition at the top? So non-immigrant admissions. Non-immigrants are foreign nationals granted temporary admission. Some examples are tourists, business travelers, students, temporary workers, diplomatic. These forms are issued most types of time, with the exceptions of Canadian tourists and business travelers and Mexicans with border crossing cards. So basically, almost none of that 46% coming from North America likely comes from Canada, because their tourists are just driving across. And business travelers are just, they don't count in this.
Yeah, I live right here in Detroit. We have a border crossing with Canada and Windsor, and you don't need a temporary visa. You could come over, you have to show your passport, and I don't know how long you could stay without filling out work with the government, if how long I have to look into that. But yeah, I mean, there's 77 million people that come to the U.S., students, business, travel, 52.4% of exchange visitors, for students came from Asia. A lot of, Europe is big, like probably travel people, work visa, are staying here for a few months. A lot of Europeans come here. So class of admission, temporary, 79% are temporary visitors for pleasure. That's just tourist, vacation, 11% business, 5% temporary workers, 3.4% students.
Yeah, and I just wonder how many people get I would love to know what the visa, like basically the tourist visa, looks like, the admission process, and how many people come and they stay.
Yeah, I'm saying these are Department of Homeland Security. So, here, this is the last one on enforcement actions, alien apprehensions. So, 2016, there were 530,000 alien apprehensions. And in 2008, there were over 1 million. Border protection, 78% of people are apprehended through the border protection, which is mostly the Mexico. And I know Homeland Security here, there's actually, just here through Canada, there's quite a bit of Homeland Security here in Michigan with Lake, and a lot of them are coming from Canada. And actually, most of those that they say are European. the people that would be like crossing on boat from Canada to the U.S. are largely European illegal immigrants, and but statistically that's probably much smaller than what's happening on the Mexico border.
Yeah.
And ICE, saying ICE, less than 1% of aliens are captured through ICE. Or ICE, HSI. Then there's ICE.
Which is busting up. I mean, that's when they bust up criminal rings.
And ERO, 20% are through ERO.
I love to see how they've dropped. I mean, the real problem with this statistic is being any kind of meaningful is the unknown number of border crossings that go undetected.
Okay, so this is the last of the statistics here, and you're saying the bulk of all of these are from Mexico: removals, returns, inadmissibility, determinations. So I mean, people that try to come to the border and are rejected. 275,000. Cuba and Mexico, although that's probably from all over the place relatively, as opposed to alien removals. 72% of alien removals are from Mexico, and 40% of those are criminals. Of the alien removals are criminals. Yeah. Alien returns without an order of removal, over 100,000, also mostly Mexico, with a lot of Canada, and those just might be people who overstayed their visa.
Yeah.
Okay, so now we're going to get even more autistic. I don't know if you want to take a break to correspond to anyone in the chat, or if there's anything.
Yeah, let's see. Jonathan Pohl says most tourist visas in the U.S. are 3 months. The largest groups of overstayers are Irish and Polish.
Did you want to invite Jonathan Pohl to comment on that? He had to email. I don't know if I want to. If I have to email him.
I don't have his. Should we just? How many people are watching? And we could just post it in the chat.
There's 20 people watching. I don't mind. I guess I don't think anyone's gonna try to spam.
Yeah.
I don't know if Jonathan Pohl's still here, still wants to join.
He's here.
I mean, I don't want to debate right now. Like saying that my goal here is just to, interesting Mephistopheles, just tried to drop the F-bomb, and Google is asking me whether I should show it or not.
That sounds like my boy Meth.
Okay, so I'm not trying to debate here. Like, this is more a factual showing of data. So I got his email. I'm gonna email him the chat. And this isn't a debate. This isn't even a discussion. This is a data of analysis. Analysis data, and that's the goal here. So see if the email I just sent the email to Jonathan. Next. There's one more Pew Survey, the shifting public view on legal immigration into the U.S., which, this is, and then we're going to get really autistic, and we're going to look at just pure, charts and numbers, like what countries are people coming from, how many, historical data, like the actual survey of the actual, government record of the numbers. So Jonathan was sent the link. Just looking at some of this chat. I'll have to look back at the chat later. Duvid, did you mention how illegal immigrants have made up 35% of the total prison population and inmates? There's so much data here. Saying like you could, if you were an immigration policy expert, you would have to know all this stuff. Most people who are on the immigration question, they don't really even know this basic data that we're telling right now, let alone like all the fine details of this data. And that's why I said we're not having the immigration debate right now. You know that me and you disagree about this stuff. Just while I've been here online, I clicked over to my Facebook and was invited to a protest here in Detroit. But we just want to agree about the facts, and most of these are government official statistics.
Yeah.
So I mean, content watcher, like how much is enough? I'm not here to debate immigration right now. EJ Lux is asking the same thing. So this isn't the immigration debate right now. We just want to come. What are the facts? And saying this is really like if you were in politics and let's say me and you were on opposite sides of the aisle, and you were bringing a content expert who would just give an overview of the facts, or if like Department of Homeland Security was briefing the congressional committee, it'd be something like this. So the Democrats and the Republicans would both come to the briefing by Department of Homeland Security just to get the facts and the numbers. And, those statistics I gave were actually Department of Homeland Security statistics. So if the chat, you guys want to debate that, you could debate that. And I don't know if Poll's going to get it. So let's look at this, here. So since 2001.
Yeah, and I don't think it would be, I don't think I think that's what the chat is a great place for, right? I mean, for the kind of debate of like what we're presenting means, right?
Yeah, and saying this data is useful for both of us, regardless of our opinion. You have to, we got to agree upon the facts in the current state. And, as I said, we might come to some sort of, if we were congressmen or something trying to come to proposals, we might agree on certain elements, like I said, like employment visas. Or, what areas could we decrease? And hopefully that's what they are doing in Congress. And, Trump, the Republicans are going to be able to get some sort of immigration reform passed before the November elections. It's possible that over they'll go home in August and they'll come back and they'll be able to get some sort of legislation passed. So here, these are just data about, Pew about Americans' opinions toward immigration. So percent who say that legal immigration into the U.S. should be decreased or increased. So generally people are becoming more and more favorable to legal immigration. So you're saying illegal immigration is a problem, legal immigration is not a problem. And you might disagree, like you looked at those family visas, like the 70% of legal immigration is coming from families and extended families coming here to the U.S. But generally, consensus in America, a huge increase in the last 20 years towards favoring legal immigration. And Democrats, if you divide that up, Democratic, Republican, there's even Republicans have increased in their support of legal immigration, but Democrats have like doubled, and the Republicans just a small change. Undocumented immigrants, so are you unsympathetic or sympathetic?
Hey, pause. There's a question. So Halsey's working on trying to set up a debate or a discussion with you and Jay Dyer. I assume it would be about religion. I mean, or at least tangentially related to that, some aspect of that. I mean, is that okay?
Yeah, so if he wanted to debate the Christological interpretation of the Hebrew prophets or something, that might be a debate, as opposed to like a discussion where we'd just be talking theology. Or if you actually wanted to like have a debate where we're preparing things and he wants to debate, like, is Jesus
You're saying he's proposed the Christological
interpretation of the Hebrew prophets, where he's trying to say accept that Jesus was your Messiah, and I'd be saying Jesus is not our Messiah, or something like that. Then that would actually be a debate, as opposed to maybe we'd be talking about theological concepts.
No, that's great content. I like that content. Don't cuck for Halsey.
Yeah, I mean, presumably Dyer has got a bigger channel. I don't know if it makes sense that we could probably do that on like Andy Worski or JF or something, or I don't know why Halsey would be necessary for that one. I don't know.
I don't think Halsey talks.
If he wants to set it up,
I think they're working on doing it on Andy Worski's channel.
Yeah, so that way they probably make some money off of it, or I don't know, it'd be a bigger view.
I think it would be. I think it would be because the thing is Jay Dyer has a close relationship with Worski. At one point, he was the co-host after JF. So I think it would make most sense to do it there, and I think that'd be good for you because you've already been exposed to JF's audience, and Worski has a slightly different one.
So here's your big Republican Democratic divide. Are you sympathetic or unsympathetic to undocumented immigrants in the U.S.? So 86% of Democrats are sympathetic, and Republicans are evenly split, for in between sympathetic and unsympathetic. Although there's the 26% of Republicans that are very unsympathetic, but like generally, even Republicans are evenly split. And this just means, are you sympathetic? Doesn't mean, okay, like I'm sympathetic, but I'm still going to deport you, or the policy. But it's a huge split you could see between.
And there's a huge connotation with the term sympathetic. Like, who wants to be unsympathetic?
Well, I mean, 50% of Republicans are willing to say they're unsympathetic. They said, like, I'm sorry, no, you broke the law, you came here illegally, undocumented. I don't have any sympathy for you.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I don't know what's going to happen to you or what bad things are going to happen to you, but I'm sorry.
Right.
Giving way to legal status for those who came to the U.S. illegally, like a reward for doing something wrong. So don't think this way. Democrats don't, like Republicans are evenly split. Like, you don't want to reward someone for doing the wrong thing. People came here illegally, they can't be rewarded. So even Republicans are evenly split. As were Democrats, they're like, no, man, 85% like saying like you can't look
like, they're like, look, this is in our self-interest. We're going to justify it any way we need to. Sort of.
Well, I'm saying it's a legitimate difference.
I just want to point this out about how self-interest can cloud these responses and like sort of the like would Democrats support immigration if immigrants voted Republican, or would this whole thing be reversed? You know what I'm saying?
I mean, you could throw that out there, but so I mean, so the Pew is more like just public surveys of what people answer to these survey questions. Just to break from the hard facts that we're going to get more into. So here fewer than half know that the most immigrants in the U.S. are here legally. Percent who think that most immigrants who are living in the U.S. are here. So illegally 42%, legally 45%. So it's basically like half are here legally, illegally. And you see like college graduates think that more people are here legally than illegal. Hispanics think more people are here illegally than actually are. Not super interesting, that data. Democrats overwhelmingly say undocumented immigrants are no more likely than U.S. citizens to commit serious crimes. Republicans are divided. So, so are they mostly filling jobs U.S. citizens would like, or mostly filling jobs that U.S. citizens do not want? So 71% of
so I see an interesting
71% of Americans agree that immigrants are largely filling jobs that we don't want.
Yeah, so
that's across the board. I mean,
all right. So
hold on. And then the serious crimes, more likely than U.S. citizens to commit serious crimes, not more likely. So
here's what I see is. Let me just give you my take on this page. Okay, so the first column on the left, in terms of the jobs question, I find it interesting that blacks are the least likely. Basically, are the most likely to say that they are filling jobs that citizens would like. So blacks being at the bottom of the
social economic,
are the most affected by low skill Hispanic immigration, right?
And also older people,
only with lower educations, like the ones who are actually impacted by this stuff. And then of course you got.
Oh, Jonathan. Okay, Jonathan's here.
Blacks think that they are most likely to be affected by immigrants taking the jobs, but yes. I think in reality you'll find it's actually Hispanics. But because it's their own people coming across the border, they're likely to be in denial that they're taking their jobs.
Yeah,
but
I don't think
are different than Hispanics, and they're in conflict with them. They're going to say, yeah, they're taking our jobs, whereas the Mexican American will be in denial that, well, the guy from Mexico is taking my job.
Yeah, no, it's no question that the Hispanics are you almost like should throw their data out of this question because they have an extreme bias.
And then if you look at the obvious Republican,
and then even like the age thing, I mean, sort of the 18 to 29-year-olds have no fucking clue what the job market looks like. So of course they don't think it's a problem. Excuse my language, dude. I don't want to bring potty talk to your.
Yeah, it's just not necessary. There's no. I mean, so it's just autism and number. So you have your Democratic and Republican, and most Republicans are 2-to-1 also agreement that immigrants are taking mostly jobs that U.S. citizens don't want. But Democrats, huge. You got average 82%, liberals 88%, as where Republicans only 57 to 30. And then about, on the right, you have crimes more likely than U.S. citizens to commit serious crimes. No more likely than U.S. citizens to commit serious crimes. Average 65% say that immigrants are not more likely to be criminals. 65 to 26% yes. Whites slightly more.
Yeah, well, you have
more likely to think that immigrants are committing crimes than blacks, and then
right, and of course,
not huge differences. Age people, as people get older, they're more likely to be skeptical that immigrants are committing more crimes. As people are less educated, they're more likely
to live around, more likely to live around.
That could possibly, you're more likely to live around immigrants, and the Republicans are basically evenly split. Where Republicans about it's half if they think immigrants are committing more crimes, and the more conservative, even a majority, think that immigrants are more likely to commit crimes, as opposed to liberals. 90% say no, immigrants aren't any more likely to commit crimes, and Democrats as a whole 80 to 12. So I mean, they're pretty obvious, but you see the actual numbers. It's good to know. Here's percent who say undocumented immigrants living in the U.S. are, more likely or no more likely than U.S. citizens to commit crimes. So, the ones that are illegally are, 37% as opposed to legally. So still people, illegal immigrants, still there's a decent amount that say they're more likely. Illegal immigrants, definitely. In Republicans, like a majority. Democrats, they're pretty soft on either state.
And these are just opinions about facts, not facts themselves.
Yeah, that's
okay. I just want to be clear about that, because
there's another representation.
There's a lot of cognitive biases that prevent people from understanding what the actual facts are.
2013 to 2018, percent who feel that giving people who came to the U.S. illegally a way to gain legal citizen is like rewarding for doing something wrong, is actually decreased. From 2013 to 2018, it's down among Republicans and Democrats, very sharply down among Democrats, but a 10-point drop across the board.
Yeah.
And we're wrapping this one up. Sympathy, percent who say that they are sympathetic or unsympathetic.
We already did this one.
This one, just has a breakdown between men, women, white, black, age group, college level. If anyone wants to see that.
Right. We've seen the same overall trend where women are more sympathetic as you go. Hispanics are most, followed by blacks. Whites are least sympathetic. As you get older, your sympathy drops. Less education means less sympathy. And of course, Republicans evenly split, whereas Democrats are shamelessly self-interested.
Yeah, so here's increasing legal immigration. So, this is becoming more and more partisan, where Democrats are increasingly in favor of increased immigration, and Republicans, even Republicans are warming up to immigration relatively statistically.
Yeah. It's actually interesting. Can we go back to that page that showed us like 2 pages ago? It showed the transition from 2016 to 2018.
2013.
Yeah, it showed 3 years, and it showed. Okay.
5 years.
5. So I would wonder, like, if the sharp change between 2015 and 2018, particularly amongst Democrats, is sort of a reaction to Trump. Like, you don't like Trump, then you don't like what he says about immigrants.
Yeah, I mean, the two parties are becoming more extreme, and I was mentioning that just like in the alt-right is affecting the Republicans, you had Bernie Sanders on the Democratic, where you have now Democratic socialists are gaining more power, and so there's been more extreme infighting in the Democratic Party also. And so they're moving towards full democratic socialism.
Yeah.
And there's a lot to get through, so here's the breakdown of the should legal immigration be increased, kept at its present level, or decreased? So totals say 32% say it should be increased, 38% kept at present level, 24% decreased. In the same trend, younger people are more favorable towards immigration, educated people more favorable, and Democrats more favorable than Republicans, younger people. So the same, so just the breakdown of the more information we had earlier, the widening partisan gap here they have from 2006% who say that compared to the immigrants of the early 1900s, today immigrants are more or less willing to adapt to the American way of life. So March 2006, you had more willing. Generally, people are saying that among that they're more willing since 2006 to 2018. In Democrats, a huge change, and even Republicans have seemed to be more favorable. Although what you have the less willing increasing. So I'm not sure if you have any comment on this.
So my thought here is that there's an overall. So for the overall total, there's definitely a consideration of changing demographics and who's answering in 2006 versus 2018. Okay. As we saw, 30 million people in the last 30 years. So in 2006, that's 20 million people new. Not counting everything, built up from before. Among Republicans by 2018, someone who is a Republican post-Trump would almost expect it to be like, if you're still on the Republican train, you would have adopted a more Trumpian position on this. Democrats, it seems like, have just completely.
Well, the Republicans, the middle's hollowed out. So actually, the Republicans who said more willing actually increased from 13 to 15%.
Well, and I think that probably has a lot to do with just a more generalized. It's 12 more years of social conditioning, I guess.
As where
I don't know. I see a change at 13 to 15 as almost statistical noise, right?
Yeah, the Democrat change was huge from 38% that said less willing in 2006.
Right, because it's almost
17%.
On principle, like, you can't be a Democrat and ever question immigrants today. They have drunk the Kool-Aid too.
Well, 17% still do. So that's still almost 1 out of 5.
Almost.
But
the years are interesting.
In 2006, there were more Democrats who were saying that the immigrants are less willing than today. So your average Democrat in 2006 thought like Republicans on this issue.
Yeah, but the year is interesting. I lived on the Mexican border during that year. I was in the Mexican border from 2005 to 2007. And there was a huge number of people that crossed every day. And that almost completely went away when the 2008 crash came. So there's a lull. The years are not standard, because when the job disappeared, a lot of the illegal immigrants went home until things got better back in the U.S.
Speak a little English. Among those who often sometimes come into contact with immigrants who speak little or no English, percent who say that they are not bothered or bothered. So, from 1993 to 54% not bothered, 45% bothered, a huge switch across America. 73% of Americans now aren't bothered by immigrants that don't speak English.
Yeah.
And they don't have a Republican Democratic divide, but that's over 25 years there's been a huge switch in the demographics. They're like, yeah, what do I care whether they speak English? And that technology might have a factor in that also. Now that you have like Google Translate and the ATMs and the government papers, that could be in other languages. Here's the partisan divide by not bothered. So even Republicans are less bothered than in 93 about people not speaking English by, statistical almost nothing, but Democrats were half-half. So 93, half of Democrats were still, only half of Democrats didn't care that immigrants didn't speak English. And now it's, basically consensus view, 85% of Democrats, I don't care whether they speak English or not.
I don't know how old you guys are, but I remember in the 1980s, there was a huge push by the Republicans, particularly in California, to try and get English as an official language of the state of California. And it failed at that time.
That bled into the 90s a little bit, didn't it?
Yeah, into the early 90s. But by the time I graduated college in 92, it was pretty much an issue that they were not going to win on anywhere, it appeared.
Too much damage had been done.
So I haven't seen it politically pushed since then. And so 92 was what? A long time ago, half my lifetime ago.
Yeah.
I want to show this one thing, and I'll try to make this quick, even though it's like a 87-page report.
Who's pushing this?
A few. This is the demographics.
Nager, Hart, Ezel.
This is the demographics of innovation in the United States, and it's not a complete survey, but just saying like, who are the people that are winning Nobel Prizes, that are really coming up with innovative stuff that is changing the United States. And so let me get to, there's only a few findings that I'm going to bring out, and it's looking at awards, patents, and different. And I mean, you're going to see that Asians are disproportionately. So I mean, it's a little bit about females. What percentage of females are making scientific, breakaways and discoveries, and it's interesting that only 10% of scientific, big innovations or breakthroughs come from females in.
Yeah, so can I say real quick, I'm looking at the board. ITIF is the source of this material. Their honorary co-chairs include 3 current congressmen. There's Democrat Senator Chris Coons, Republican Senator Orrin Hatch, Republican Congressman Darrell Issa, 3 establishment big dogs.
Yeah, and saying
and also Anna Eshoo, Democrat representative from Congress.
Darrell Issa is the representative of Silicon Valley, right?
Yeah, Eshoo is also
further south.
Yeah, well now Eshoo represents
San Diego. San Diego region.
Yeah, okay, so Anna Eshoo, I think, is the Democrat lawmaker from Silicon Valley, and then you have Senator Bigwig, Orrin Hatch, and Chris Coons. So no friends of nationalist immigration.
His
Exactly.
family is Lebanese.
Exactly. So this is a pro-immigration foundation. So I just want to be clear about that before we get into the data.
Yeah, and this one we're not going to spend too much time on, but this is pro-immigrant, but it's specifically talking about high IQ immigrants, and you look at the women. It's interesting that of immigrants, that women are more likely to excel among immigrants than American-born. You see, like material science, almost like 25% of these award-winning scientists are female, but across the board, 15% female for immigrants and only 10% for Americans. They're just a quick note. The survey sample, it looks kind of small. So, of the people who won these immigration awards, 516 males. You see that the majority are coming from. Let me skip the stuff about females. Here you have PhD, just interesting in biological sciences. Actually, a majority of PhDs are earned by females, but in like physics, engineering, so that's neither here or there for the immigration. The statistics about women. So let me get past that. Okay, so here, table 7, born share of U.S. population. So ethnicity of U.S. born innovators, 60% are white.
We're actually overrepresented.
Yeah, although they're not dividing here because between Jews and non-Jews. So it could be that if you took the Jews out of this, that white people would be underrepresented. Yeah, I noticed that when I looked at that they.
But blacks and Hispanics do nothing in terms of.
Yeah. I mean, so you look like Hispanics 1.4%, but compared to their percent of the U.S. population of over 10%, you have very little. And then we're going to see the.
But I'm surprised Asians are only 0.8.
Well, here, so let's of the foreign-born innovators, 20%, 17.8% of these innovations came from Asians, 12.6% from European immigrants, from the U.S. population side. So Asians are almost 4 times higher than their numbers. And it's interesting, the European brain drain, that the Europeans who come here in universities accomplish a lot. So, the Europeans innovating and I know I go to automotive conferences and engineering conferences, and there's all these like German scientists all over the place. And, so it's actually European immigrants here are very beneficial to America, but Asians the most so.
Yeah.
And you hear they have actually the awards, the large tech companies, and so it's basically all white and Asian, other people accomplishing big things. But compared to the number of Asians are coming here, they're statistically extremely overrepresented, towards high tech in accomplishments, towards pushing technology further. And it'd be interesting if they divided the white in to see what percentage of these white people are actually Jews. But besides Asians and whites, those. Yeah,
but they can't break out people on Jewish Gentile lines because the Constitution prohibits giving any numbers on basis of religious affiliation. So if this is a government publication, they can't break out the religious affiliations of people. They're not allowed to ask the question.
Yeah, so that's here. Look at the percentage of doctoral degrees by race, and you could see in 1976, over 90% of doctoral degrees were to whites, and now it's just over 70%. And the largest increase is Asians. Asians are over 10%. This increase in blacks and Hispanics, but it's largely Asians that are displacing whites.
I'd be curious how much of the blacks were A, immigrants from Africa, and B, women. I suspect that black American men are still way, way underrepresented on that.
Yeah, but they're increasing. The number of doctoral degrees awarded to blacks and Hispanics is increasing.
Because they've created,
but they're still underrepresented.
Wait, does this differentiate by, is this a subset of doctoral degrees, like including the humanities? Stuff like women's studies, African American studies.
Well, here's the chart that has it per, so physical science, like engineering. If you look at Asians, like in engineering, Asians are almost 40%, and in computer science, Asians are almost 40%. But life sciences, Asians are disproportionately represented in every field. But in terms of physical science, mathematics, and life sciences, much less so than computer science and engineering. And, when you look at the Hispanics and blacks, they're only a few percent in any of these fields. And, whites in computer science, like engineering and computer science, whites are close to less than half already.
So the one thing about these numbers, I'm wondering, now this is a sample from 1 year, but the one before where whites seem to decline, it would be interesting to know what the absolute numbers are, right?
Yeah, this was the best data I could find.
Yeah, no, it's fine. I'm just.
I have to do more research, but I did want to, put the.
Go back to that heat map. Go up. So,
first generation immigrants make up 13% of the U.S. population and 16.5% of the U.S. workforce, but 35.5% of innovators in the U.S. come from first generation.
Are they defining innovators as someone with a STEM degree? I mean, is that what qualifies one?
Awards in these certain tests. They had like a few different indicators of people who had like different awards or were awarded by different organizations.
Okay.
This survey is in the link in the description. I'll add it to the chat. An interesting, Europe. It groups Europe together. So like India or China, it doesn't have a subdivision. I would presume Germany's probably the highest. I'm going to add this link into the chat. And so India and China are the main, the huge ones. In Europe, it'd be interesting why they didn't subdivide it.
I suspect a lot of the European ones are from former Soviet states, Russia, Ukraine.
And here, interesting.
And hold on, go back one page. Go up to where they had that thing. They had Europeans at the top of the list. Up right here. No, up. This. So this is just the sample size.
Yes, I mean these are award-winning innovators, people that really.
Well, so because my point would be here that
there was the whole survey only had like 700 people.
Right. So the thing about that heat map, the thing about that heat map is it's like it gives the impression that they all come from India and China, and that Europe. But see, most people come from Europe.
Yeah, I mean here you can see
most of them come from Europe. The base population of Europe is actually lower than it is in India and China. So if the heat map was done on on the continental basis, it would be the hottest region. So it's a little deceptive. It's a little deceptive how that's done. I mean, the impression of that heat map is to give the idea that everybody's coming from India and China.
Yeah, and this needs more study. And here you see first of the generational that we've naturalized immigrants first third generation. So even of the U.S. citizens, a lot of them are, if they're third generation plus, that's the majority of those people have been in the U.S. for over 3 generations. Here's the further dividing, and yeah, I just wanted to put this out here for.
So here we go. Within U.S. born scientists and engineers compared with the innovators. So, yeah.
U.S. Whites and Asians are equal, 1.1.
No, it's interesting, like the American, and I saw this earlier, is the Native American innovation. It was higher. Yeah.
Yeah, that's actually interesting. Europe relatively, the Europeans that come here are relatively pretty high educated. So I mean, it was interesting. I wanted to get that out of here, and we'll go on to more autistic stuff. I thought you should show there is some benefit to immigration, and what's pushing forward technology and big scientific advancement, and a lot of immigration is helpful for that. And so I got this is pretty autistic. This was the main thing I wanted to do, and this is your Department of Homeland Security, what we were talking before, your 2016 Yearbook of Immigration Statistics, and we don't have the 2017. They haven't published it yet. And then I also have the World Migration Report that depending on how much time, and so you're going to see this is this is just pure numbers. I mean, Brundle, you're probably pretty good at reading this stuff. I'm pretty good at reading this. For people in the chat, here the first table: persons obtaining lawful permanent resident status from 1820 to 2016.
It exploded in 1850, 1840,
1842.
Well, yeah, not really 18. I mean, I would say 1847 forward. It's just
so they don't have any nice charts or graphics here to show it like on a chart. So you just have to.
We can see it. So scroll down. So it goes up 1847. It keeps high up until the Civil War. Nobody wants to come here. Jumps back right at the end of the war. Then scroll up. And I know there were some crashes in like the late 1870s. There was an economic depression. It just keeps chugging along. Scroll down past 1900.
1905, 1907, it's huge when my great-grandfather came here.
Yeah, and then it drops off. World War I happens. World War I happens, and then it drops down, but then it pops right back up.
I mean, to the 19,000s during World War II.
But notice the Great Depression. Nobody's coming here.
Yeah, I mean, we saw that. Well, I mean, there's still a net plus. Even during the Great Depression, 1927, there's a few 100,000, 31, 35,000, 23,000, 33 is the lowest year. And we saw this chart on the Homeland Security that it had the chart from 1916. And then
but what's incredible to me is 1986 that they did amnesty, right?
86?
86. Yeah. And then
86
fucking almost 2 million people. The George Bush the first administration. Holy crap. They were giving them away like
that's Reagan. Oh yeah, I mean
no, 88.
No, 89.
89 to 91.
Goes to over a million.
Yeah, I mean
1.5 million and 90 to the US.
1.8. Thank God for Bill Clinton. Bill Clinton got it under control. And then it goes back up under George W. Bush.
Yeah, I mean, so it's what we saw. It's been over a million a year, basically, for 30 years now. For 30 years, we've been, a million new people each year. Although it's interesting because you see, we were bringing a million people a year, also at the turn of the century. 1905 to 1907, 1910, 13, 14. So that like over a million immigrants a year, but presumably in those years of the early 1900s. Like 80-90% of those people were from Europe, and in the last 30 years, the million a year, probably less than 10% of those people are from Europe.
Yeah, but at the earlier time, there were also huge problems with immigration because a lot of the Europeans hadn't assimilated yet. So you had the Italian anarchists and groups of people from Southern and Eastern Europe who were still not learning the English language and living in isolated ghettos.
But we're going to have the actual, this is Department of Homeland Security, so this is the actual numbers, 1820 to 29, 30, so these are broken down into 10-year periods from 1820 to 1910, and then afterwards we're going to get from 1910 till present time. So we see, Europe, starting like 100,000 from 1820 to 30 to 400,000 to over a million to 1900 to 1909. Almost 7.5 million people came from Europe to the United States. And then you have the breakdown in Austria, Hungary, Belgium, Bulgaria. If you look at Italy or something.
Last 2 decades.
So most people here were Germanic. If you look at the beginning, you had Ireland, like 1840 to 1849, 59, you had huge numbers of Irish people. 650,000 Irish people came from 40 to 49. Over a million Irish people came from 50 to 59. Germanic people has always been one of the highest.
It's higher than it looks there because a lot of those people coming from Austria and Hungary and even Russia are actually ethnic Germans. In fact, almost none of the people coming from Russia are Russians. They're either Jewish or German or Lithuanian or Polish or sometimes Finnish.
But if you look
but very few Russians.
You know what I'm interested in? I wonder why so few French ever came over here.
Yeah, I mean, well, because, I don't know. I mean, but if you look at the UK, more German people came over than UK people, and it looks like more Irish people came over than UK people.
Yeah, well, all the places that were sending immigrants had problems. So if you had a stable country with a high standard of living like France or England for most of this time, people didn't come. But Ireland was poor and suffered famine. Germany was divided. There was a couple of wars, including the Napoleonic Wars, but that struck through it. And then in 1848, there was a huge revolution and crushing, and a lot of immigrants came out. And of course, then they lost World War I. But yeah, you'll see those push factors to why those countries don't send immigrants. So
Okay.
France doesn't have much push factors, neither does Great Britain. But look at Russia. Look at the numbers there. 1.5 million from 1900 to 1909. That's when you had pogroms against Jews. That's when you
Yeah,
had
a lot of those are Jews. These statistics aren't going to tell you whether they were Jews or not.
No, but I do have the emigration statistics from Russia, and I know for emigration they only let non-Russians out basically. So most of the people were either Jewish, ethnic Germans, like my great-grandfather who left because he was mobilized to fight against the Japanese, which is what a lot of the ethnic Germans from Russia come over in 1904, 1905, or from border areas that were anti-Russian, particularly Poland, Lithuania, and Finland.
Is Scotland on here, or a lot of those UK? I wonder how much of those are Scottish.
Yeah.
Early on,
Anglos.
a lot.
Yeah.
And also a lot of I don't know who they put it, but a lot of the immigrants to the U.S. South were what they called Scotch-Irish, who were the Protestants from Northern Ireland who don't consider themselves Irish, really.
What's up with all the Turks in 1900? Turks
They're not
and
Turkish.
Japanese.
They're not Turkish.
Armenians?
No, they're Christian Arabs from Lebanon and Palestine, mostly Lebanese. And they came because there was a famine, and also there's just too many people and not jobs. And so, but there's even more that went to South America. What they call Turks in Brazil are almost all Lebanese.
Yeah, so it's interesting. We're looking at Asia, and very few Asians, and you're saying of the people who made it from Asia, they're almost all Japanese and Turkish. You look at like India.
Well, they're Japanese late, but in the mid-century, when they were building the railroads, those are Chinese. It's a couple 100,000 Chinese.
Yeah. So you have Chinese people coming in the mid 1800s,
and then the Chinese are banned by the Chinese Exclusion Act, and then the Japanese are banned by the Gentleman's Agreement.
And the other thing is almost like absolutely no Muslims. I mean, if what you're saying about the Turks being essentially Christian refugees from the Ottoman Empire.
Yeah, they're almost all Arab Christians.
Yeah. So no Muslims up to this point.
Yeah, and then you have in the
but not very many.
In the Americas, some from Canada, like in the 1860s, a good few 100,000 people from Canada. Nothing sizable from Central America, or from the Caribbean. You have some amount from Cuba.
It's around the time of the Spanish-American War.
Yep, and so more South America. Not huge. Other Americas, Africa.
No Africans, except for other Africa in 1900. I wonder.
6,000. I'm saying it's not Oceania. So Australia, not
which
huge
makes
amounts.
sense.
Okay, so that was 1900. That was 1820 to 1910. And then I'm not sure if this has only to 2000. So now we're going to have 1910 to 2000. And you look at Europeans, look at the decline.
So the 1960s is the first time when the majority of immigrants did not come from Europe.
Yeah, I mean, look at this decline in Europe from like 5 million at the turn of the century, 2.5 million to all of a sudden, World War I and II, where they start cutting European immigrants, and it never really goes back over 1 million.
Well, because they changed the law in the mid-century or mid-decade.
1965, yeah.
Yeah.
They used to have quotas, and the Germans, even when they were prosperous, were able to fulfill their quota all the way up till 1965 without a problem. But then they changed it from quotas for countries to family reunification, and so we started to get more immigration from Asia and Latin America.
Yeah, and look at like Italian immigrants, where you have like over 1 million Italian immigrants in 1910 to 1920, and Russian immigrants still in 1910 to 1920, and then after that just drops off until 1990.
Well, yeah, but it's because the Soviet Union banned emigration. So after they consolidated power, nobody could get out
until
at all.
The 90s, where it's the Jews or whatever.
Well, no, the Jewish emigration. There were exceptions for Jewish and German emigration, and then starting in the 1970s. But
well, look at 400,000 Russians in the 1990s.
That could be after the fall, or the
Poland 170. Like, look at this spike of Eastern European immigration.
Yeah, in 1987, the Soviet government said anybody who has a country they can go to, can leave. And so I would suspect most of that 400,000 were Jews, because the United States had said that they would take them in addition to the Israelis.
Yugoslavia, like, increasing to close to 60,000 in the 90s.
Yeah, because it fell apart.
Now let's see Asia. So Asia.
No, Yugoslavia fell apart in the 90s.
Yeah, so I mean Asia, you're looking at was tiny, like 1910 to 1920, 270,000. World War II period drops to like 20,000, 30,000 over 10 years, to now 90 to 99, almost 3 million, and so the largest number now. A lot of coming from Asia, and we're going to see Mexico soon. And look at China, Philippines. You start seeing these Arab numbers, like Syria. You start seeing Syria pop in. Turkey actually decreases, and all these other countries like Jordan and even Israel. Look at Israel. How many people come from? People don't realize how many Israelis come to America. So 98 people.
That's not that many.
That Israel was just founded in 1947, so that's probably 47 to 49. And then in the 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, look how many people came from Israel. Like 20,000 in the 50s, 30,000 in the 60s, in over 40,000 in the 80s and 90s. That's considering how few people are in Israel, that's a sizable amount of people that are coming. Israelis, and a lot of because that's European Jews. That or different type Jews that couldn't get into America, but they could get into Israel. And once they got to Israel, they were able to come to the United States. So they didn't really want to be in Israel, but Israel was a better option than wherever they came from. And once they were in Israel, it was significantly easier to come to the U.S. than wherever they were coming from.
True.
Yeah, but so then you look at the Americas.
Yeah, I mean, so let's see.
Up through the 40s, half or more, and even before early on, the vast majority coming from Canada. We see a spike of Mexicans in the 20s.
I mean, Mexico in the 90s already.
Almost 3 million, almost tripling from the 80s.
Yeah, the thing was huge amounts coming from the Caribbean. Look at like Haiti.
Well, but I would say
Haiti went from almost nothing to like 100,000 every 10 years. Jamaica, like I lived in New York City, like saying like Dominican Republic, Cuba. I'm saying you're part Puerto Rican, which is an American territory, but that's part of this way.
Well, yeah, we're citizens. They're born citizens. But the thing about the Mexican one, I think, is probably the huge growth in the 90s is all of the legalization of illegal Mexicans in the 80s, allowing them to legally chain migrate a ton of people in the 90s.
And then look at like El Salvador, or even Guatemala, Honduras, just huge increase. Saying that we looked, from 1820 to 1900, it was.
Those are countries that got ripped apart by civil war. So we had huge numbers of people fleeing as refugees, and then once they get refugee status, they've got a legal residency.
And then South America, these numbers are increasing. We look at Africa, not so many from Africa, but an increase in Africa in like Morocco, Liberia, Ethiopia, Egypt, basically all over the place. Like people after 1965, like you could basically get 10,000 new immigrants from every country. So basically after 1965, you got 10,000 at least from every single country coming here. And from other methods, family and different things, they were able to make it a lot more than that 10,000. So, and all of these countries, you're seeing huge increase in immigrants. And okay, they do actually have, from 2000 to 2010, then they have it year to year, 10 million. So basically, as we saw earlier, 1 million immigrants each year. Look how few Europeans, and the Europeans in the last, 20
under
years,
100,000.
under 10% of immigrants to the U.S. Look at like Finland, just a few hundred people come here. France, actually, a good few thousand. Germany, less than. If you think about it, most of these have 10,000. Immigration visas are basically capped off at 10,000. So most of these European countries are under less of them are coming than are allowed to come. You're saying you could try to entice Europeans to come here to America. They're not coming here. Less than that are allowed to come here have been coming here for a long time already. Right?
Yeah.
That's the factual statistics. I'm saying that any of these could be 10,000. They're not. They don't really want to come here. It's like Norway. Only a few hundred people from Norway each year come to America. Sweden, they're not coming here quickly. Russia may be an exception. Let's look at Asia. So Asia, see these numbers. The Europeans, are about 100,000, less than 100,000 each year, and Asia's are hundreds of thousands each year, about 400,000. So it's a 4-to-1. For every European coming to America, you have more than 4 Asians coming to America.
But
Chinese,
they're all coming
India.
from China and India, the two
They're
big
coming
ones.
from everywhere. When you get China, India, Philippines. We saw the big one: China, India, and Philippines, and like Vietnam's pretty big too, like 30,000 a year from Vietnam.
Vietnam's a bit of an exception because they have they were still processing until recently the orderly departure program.
Korea,
the end of the war.
20,000 a year from Korea, and even Iran, you're like 10,000 Iranians. And so you compare, like basically every country is sending thousands. Besides Europe, all of these countries are sending thousands of people to us every single year, and some of them, like tens of thousands. And then you're going to see Mexico. Mexico, the Americas. Mexico is the biggest. From 2000 to 2010, 1.7 million, and in between 100 and 200,000 people each year from Mexico. And these are legal immigrants. So the Caribbean, the Caribbeans, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Haiti, Jamaica, no slowing down, and those people coming here.
More El Salvadorians live in America than they do in El Salvador. It is a very small country.
Yeah, I don't know too much about El Salvador, but just seeing these statistics.
I worked with a bunch of them.
There are 4 million Salvadorians in the U.S.
You know what's interesting? Let me tell you. No, there are. There's more El Salvadorians here than there are there. Let me tell you a story. There's a guy.
Let's finish this last thing. If any comment on Africa.
Okay, all right. Go ahead.
We got Colombia, Ecuador, Guyana, Peru, all thousands coming each year. And then Africa.
Oh God, Africa.
Ethiopia.
Well, I know they're strict.
Liberia, Morocco, South Africa. Egypt.
So few South Africans. We really need to say, bring. We could use.
Well, they don't give them refugee status. If you're a white South African,
compared to Egypt and Ethiopia.
No, but the U.S. State Department will not accept claims of refugee or asylum from white South Africans, regardless of their individual situation.
Oceania,
so if your farm is attacked and you flee to the U.S. and say, "Look, I'm being persecuted because I'm an Afrikaner," it gets nowhere just because you're an Afrikaner. You're not allowed to apply. And the same thing in Australia. They tried to put a bill in the Australian Parliament to say that they could have refugee status, and it was defeated by the vote.
Okay, and then many comments. You got Australia, New Zealand, a handful, like 1,000 each year from New Zealand, a few thousand from Australia, and okay, I'm going to take it off screen share. Take a quick break. You could tell a story.
Yeah, let me tell the story real quick. So, guy I worked with, El Salvadorian. He's actually my age. He was going to go back to El Salvador, and he told like a cousin or something to like pick him up from the airport, or a cousin's friend or something like that. The very next day, he gets a phone call from like the local MS-13 down there and let him know that he needed to bring like $1,500 if he wanted to come. You know, and so I was like, dude, is that really what you, or he was telling me he had done this once, like maybe when he was 25, the first time he had gone back, he basically, if they knew you were coming, you had to pay basically to make it safely from the airport to your house kind of thing. Subsequent trips, he would just show up, not stay very long and be gone so he wouldn't get extorted. Really a fucked up situation.
I knew a guy who was in Border Patrol in Los Angeles. No, it was in Southern California. Orange County is actually where he lived. But like most of these guys, he was like born of Mexican parents. But he hated like the Central Americans. So what he had to do is take the Central American criminals back in handcuffs, and turn them over to the militaries of El Salvador and Guatemala, where I guess they just shot them. Yeah, that was something that was being done in the 90s under Clinton.
Yeah. It's scary, the kind of people we're bringing here.
Okay. Well, we didn't bring them, they came here.
Well, our leadership was complicit in their arrival.
Well, there's a lot more data to get through. When you're ready, we'll go back to some more data.
Yeah, I got probably 20 more minutes. I need to run to the grocery store and do a couple things before my big okay, so let's see brother war with Kayla tonight.
I put the link in the chat if people want to research on their own. So table 3 here has from 2000 to 2016 every country alphabetical. So that previous one we were looking at only had the main countries. So here we have every country, like America, Samoa, that has 10 people, Aruba, Bangladesh. So there's a lot more information on this chart than on the previous one if people want to research it on their own. And let's go to table 4, which has where do these people move. So persons obtaining lawful permanent residence status by state or territory. So about 1 million each year. And you could see over 20% in California. Over 200,000 of the 1 million people each year go to California. Over 100,000 go to Florida. Michigan, relatively, 18,000. Massachusetts, pretty big.
Illinois.
Illinois, up there. Georgia.
It all seems pretty flat. Like I'm not detecting like a spike in a certain place.
You mentioned like Idaho, for example. So only like 2,000 to 3,000 people.
But there's not that many people there, right? So it's all relative. I would love to see this sort of like an overrepresentation graph relative to population.
I mean, you could do your own research from that. You'd have to go to the census data, and you're saying reports like Pew or whatever. If you're a numbers guy, you could combine that data. Texas, quite a few. Virginia, Washington. So you just know the type of information that's out here. Here we have actual cities. So of the 1 million people, the Newark, New Jersey, New York, tri-state area, close
DC,
close to 20%. DC almost 5%. Like 40,000 of the more than 1 million. So this is descending order. So it's New York area, Los Angeles, then Miami, then Washington, then Chicago, San Francisco, Houston.
They're all large cities with large service sectors that need low-income immigrants.
Even like Charlotte, so you got Charlotte, North Carolina, close to 5,000 each year.
But look, a city you wouldn't expect unless under normal, like Las Vegas is quite high. But I mean, obviously, there's all people coming in for the low wage jobs for service sector.
Yeah, you're like 10,000 a year. Denver. So this is the type of information. This is government sponsored. So here's a division of status type. So here we said family. So obviously the biggest ones are immediate relatives of U.S. citizens. So here we have a further breakdown from the chart we had before. So of the million, you have immediate relatives of U.S. citizens, about 500,000, and of those, more than half of those are spouses. So you have spouses, children, and parents. Spouses. So who are the biggest people? The biggest percentage of people coming to the U.S. About 25% are spouses of U.S. citizens. So is that something you're going to do about? You want to change that status? You want to affect the biggest number of immigrants coming into the U.S. That means spouses. And do you want to do something about that?
Oh, dude, that's one lot. 300,000 out of 1.2, so a quarter.
That's the biggest chunk.
Right. So in 2016, okay, just so we're clear, 2016, the number one source of a quarter were people marrying out. No, if somebody wants to marry a foreigner, so be it.
And they get automatic citizenship no matter where they come from.
No, they don't. I'm married to a foreigner, and I can't even get her a visa to the U.S. It's very difficult. My wife is Kyrgyz.
Yeah, but I don't know.
You race traitor.
Yeah.
I don't know the details on that, but I mean, so you're looking at it. That is the biggest source of immigrants into the country is American citizens marrying out. That's about 25%, and then parents are the next biggest. Parents of immigrants that people get here, they're allowed to bring over their parents. Are you going to allow that? I mean, do you want to limit those numbers?
No, I would not bring. And then you have I don't see the reason why. I mean, your parents, like you came here, we didn't invite your parents here.
I'm saying you want to limit immigration. That's your biggest issue. So you're saying you got to look where the numbers are the biggest.
Yeah. So I'll chew up. I'll say children. If your children were, I guess, minor. If you're a citizen,
are a bigger problem than refugees.
Yeah, I would stop parents. I don't see the need to bring parents here. Even Trump has proposed this. Like, you could bring your own non-minor children. You can't stop people from marrying, someone.
You mean your own minor children?
Your own minor children.
If they're over 18 and they're not legally resident, I'm not sure why.
So let's go through your family-sponsored preferences. So here you have unmarried sons and daughters of U.S. citizens and their children, and then you have spouses, children, unmarried sons and daughters of alien residents. Then you have married sons and daughters of U.S. citizens and their spouses and children. Then you have brothers, sisters of U.S. citizens and their spouses and children.
Yeah.
I mean, this is a little bit complicated, but you really want to understand immigration. You really got to dissect this. I mean, we talk a lot, so we have employment-based preferences. That's 140,000 people. That's only a little more than 10%. That's like 12% of immigrants. So like we talk mostly about that, but relatively that's not the big issue at hand.
Well, we talk about there's many facets to it, and I would agree that
here they have it broken down: priority workers, professionals with advanced degrees or alien exceptional ability, skilled workers, professionals, unskilled workers, certain special immigrants, and employment.
And then the invested, basically the purchased visas,
which is about 10,000 a year.
Right. Yeah. So diversity's got to go. Refugees got to go. I mean, asylees got to go.
Yeah. So if you're just like diversity, refugees, asylees, parolees, children born abroad to alien residents. So I mean, like the things that you're pretty clear about, like the Republican, and there's a lot of debate on this. Like Democrats strongly disagree. But like diversity, refugees, asylees, parolees, you could dump that. But that's only a relatively, I don't say drop in the bucket, but that's only 15-20% of you got to look at families.
Yeah, well, I don't see why parents should be coming either. I can see spouses, but generally, if you're an American citizen already and you marry a foreigner, then the children are automatically American citizens upon their birth. So the only way your children would not be citizens would be that if they were born before you became a citizen.
Yeah, and so they have a lot of breakdowns of this. And I put the link in the chat for someone who really cares about the issue, really wants to understand the politics. They could go through this. So here, you have like the age, people of the million people. Most people are between 20 and 40 of the people coming here, and more females are actually coming than males of interest. It's interesting. There's 31.
More women are coming legally.
Thinking CV. There's 31 unknowns. 31 sex unknowns.
Where?
Whatever that. I mean, you're looking. People are coming. 15 to 19 years old, 20 to 24, 25. Those are the biggest numbers.
We could start by getting rid of that. We could deport that 31. I would have no problem with that.
The majority of people that come here are married. Like over 65% of the people that are coming here to the U.S. are married. You have singles, some widows.
10% do nothing, are homemakers.
Let's look at the occupation.
Another 10% are unemployed.
Let's look at the occupation here. So so here it's like 50% no occupation, not working outside of home. Yeah. So obviously you have students and children, homemakers. So you have 160,000, because I said the biggest immigrant status of people are married people. And of those,
point out. Hold on. Only 12,000 in construction. So does that strike anybody as perhaps who makes up the construction industry or actually here illegally?
Yes, that's why
these are legally.
This is all. This is. I mean, I just want to be clear on one
there's
thing.
Like 2 million people illegally in the construction business. The legal ones.
Right. The idea that 1% of those legally coming here are working in construction, as if that's like the idea that this is representative of the jobs that people take as immigrants is like you see, this data almost doesn't mean anything without taking into account illegal immigration. I mean, in some sense, all this is really pointing to is the people that come here legally are either the dependents of people that are here legally, or they are, as it says, that job. I mean, so if half don't work, the other half, a sizable
it's because
200,000. The vast majority of them are in jobs that are white collar.
Yeah, management, professional, and related.
Right, but something like 25%, maybe more, of all immigrants are quote undocumented.
Yeah, easily more than a quarter. Easily.
So let's just the low. We don't have exact numbers because obviously they're not documented.
To lowball it is to accept a certain narrative that I just am not.
All right, what do you want the number? 35%?
Half.
Okay, half.
At least.
So that the other half are doing all the construction jobs and jobs as busboys and dishwashers and other
like black people
menial labor that you see immigrants from Mexico and Central America doing in places like California and Arizona.
So let's get a little bit more information before you have to run. So here's the breakdown per country, whether it's family-sponsored, employment-based, immediate relatives, diversity. So diversity is coming largely from Africa and Asia, and Europe is actually 20% of diversity, but who knows what countries those are. I mean, it will say actually what countries like Armenia, Algeria, Albania.
Algeria is not European.
Algeria is North Africa.
Refugees and asylees. So it's like family-sponsored, a lot from Asia and North America. So North America are probably mostly Mexicans, some Canadians. Mostly from Asia, the family-sponsored ones, the biggest amount. Employment-based, 80,000 of the 137,000 employment-based are coming from Asia. Immediate relatives, also majority, huge amount coming from Asia and North America, probably Mexicans. If you want to see like Bangladesh, you can see the numbers. Brazil, Burma, Canada, not so many. So
China.
Yeah, I mean, China, 80,000 people of the immediate relatives. So I mean, they're taking advantage of the immediate relatives type thing. So you see the Chinese.
What are the figures on Ghana?
Ghana, 6,000. Although a lot of those are immediate relatives. Of the people coming from Ghana, like 5,000 of the 7,000 are immediate relatives.
When I lived in Ghana, it was
Haiti
always
also,
said
Honduras.
that the U.S. Embassy in Ghana has the highest percentage of rejections for visas to the U.S. of any embassy the U.S. runs.
India, you have a lot of people coming on, 65,000, and 24,000 are bringing over their family. So Indian people are being successful, but then they're bringing over their family once they're here. And like I know that I see a lot of Indian people that come over there, become successful. They bring Mexico. Of the 175,000, 120,000 of those are people who are bringing over their family.
Yeah.
So like
which were what defined as parents, children, or
brothers, sisters.
Yeah, brothers, sisters.
No, not brothers or sisters.
I don't think includes those, but most of them are parents and children. Well, they could also be brothers.
Yeah, because I don't think your sibling actually qualifies. Like what happens is you would have to bring your parent, and then they would. Once they're here, they would be able to bring your brother or sister.
Yeah, but look at the Philippines. So we might be bringing over like Filipino nurses and stuff like that. But once they're here, they bring over their family, and you get more people, family members, than people who are working. And so you have to put a lot of consideration. And like I encourage people who really care about this issue to to study this and more data. I'm not sure. You got to run.
I got to run. I mean, if you two want to keep going, I mean, by all means.
We might. What time's your debate?
10 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be on the channel House of Faust, which I think is spelled. Let me look it up real quick. It might be Haus, House of Faust.
I mean, you're going to share it on Twitter when it comes up.
And there's only 280 subs. I didn't know I was doing a little baby channel.
I don't know why she's not doing it.
How big is esoteric Dubidism?
Esoteric Dubidism is bigger. I think you're at
300 subs, but I don't get like Big Cat Kayla. I mean, I might. If Big Cat Kayla, they'll probably have 100 viewers tonight on it. Because you and her, you'll probably have 100 viewers or so. Yes, where like 40 viewers, I think, is the most I've ever had.
Yeah, and you did that when you got a full panel of degeneracy. You had to get really degenerate for 40 people.
Although I'm getting more than 10, even when it's just me, I'm getting more than a minion. And even up to 20, we've had like No,
you're doing great. It's going great here. I really like what you're doing with your channel.
So
I just linked the channel to House of Faust. If you want to throw that in the chat,
inside the Google chat.
I put it in the right there. You could put that in the.
Okay. And the chat for everybody.
Thank you.
Not sure if you want to continue doing this, Jonathan.
Yeah, I'm out. Take it later, fellas.
I mean, I got a Pew report on Europe. I'll just put that in the chat if people are autistic and want to look at it. But if you want to stay on, Jonathan, I got one last the mega.
We can go through it. We can go through it fast, but I think we're crunching through a lot of demographic data here. I'm not sure how much people can absorb at one time.
That was my point. I'm not sure you want to come in on this, Babs. I see you there. I got the world migration report of 2018, and this is 400 pages. I don't have to go through it all. Let me see. They have any nice graphics? Then I'll zoom in because this is the world data. So let me zoom in. Are you seeing this?
Yeah, I got it.
Okay, I'm going to put this in the chat if people want to follow along. And here is the total number of migrants as a part, in 1970 to 2015, there's 240 million world migrants, and it's saying it's increasing from the 70 when it was only 84 million. It was 2.3% of the world's population. Now it's 3.3%. I mean, just the huge number, 240 million people migrating in 2015. And I assume you've heard numbers like this before?
Yeah.
Here's the, showed in percentage or increase. So it's a small uptick in percent, but the population of the world is increasing, so the numbers are going up. So here's the varying, like for example, the United Arab Emirates is almost 88% immigrants. Switzerland, 30%. Australia, 28%.
Yeah, but they're not permanent immigrants. The UAE is very careful to make sure that the people are temporary. They confiscate their passports and can deport them at any time.
Yeah, I mean, migrants in it's a bit. Here's the age pyramid of the age of most migrants. Like we saw in the U.S. From 20 to 50. Most of them from 25 to 45, and majority male by a few percent. 72% they say are working age, 20 to 64. And here's by continent breakdown in millions. So Asia, Europe, and this is probably where they're going to, North America.
Yeah, this is where their destination.
We'll see hopefully soon where they're coming from, but
not very many going to Latin America.
Yeah, I guess they will go to top 20 destinations,
U.S.
and origins. So where are they trying to go? America. Like vast majority, top 20 destinations. America more so than any other place in the world. This is where they want to come. And you go down, where are they coming from? India,
Mexico, Russia.
It's over 50 million. Yeah, India, Mexico, former Russia Federation, China. China's like 30 million.
That's interesting. Russia exports lots of Russians to Europe, and then it imports people from Central Asia. So they're number 3 on importing people and number 3 on exporting people.
I mean, Kazakhstan is like 3-4 million people.
Yes, they take a lot of people in from Uzbekistan and Kyrgyzstan.
Estimates of irregular migrant populations in selected countries, Australia.
Irregular, does that mean undocumented?
I'm not sure. There's so much information. Here's one of these interesting charts, like where they're coming from, where they're going. It's not very clear, this chart. But I mean, I've seen charts like this, but this one's not so clear. This document's like 400 pages, so just migrant deaths and missing migrants worldwide.
No, those are documented deaths. The actual real number of deaths are much higher. I mean, just across the U.S.-Mexican border.
Here, like the Mediterranean,
people die of dehydration.
5,000. Yeah, so it's probably much higher than here. It's like less than 10,000. Top 10 host transit countries and country territories of origin. AVRR benefits. AVRR, assisted voluntary return and reintegration programs.
The IOM program.
So host or transit country like Germany is the biggest one. That's supporting that, 54,000. And we got people come from Albania, Iraq, Afghanistan.
I assume Niger is a transit country, not a host country.
Yeah. I mean, if you're really autistic, you want to try reading the whole survey. Here's the income level that migrant workers' income level of destination countries. So obviously, they're trying to come to high-income countries. And here you can see on the chart. the destination. People want to come to high income countries, and like the females even more so. And I don't. Yeah, I'm not even reading through the text here. I just wanted to show a little bit more data. Remittances. India way up there. China, India, Mexico. I mean, people come, they send their money back to where they came from.
I'm surprised France is so high.
I mean, where are French people going that they're making more money to send the money back to France?
I don't know. Maybe Quebec.
Or maybe they're businessmen, they're French people going to places with worse economies, but they're very profitable business people that they could send their money back home.
That's possible. There's a lot of French business in West Africa, Central Africa, where there used to be colonial power.
So I mean, probably the U.S. here, because you see, like over half of remittances are coming from the U.S. And actually, Saudi Arabia. Look how much remittances.
Yeah, that's not surprising because there's a huge number of foreign workers because of the oil in Saudi Arabia.
In Switzerland, and look at China. I mean, I guess the people that go to China might be very successful in business. So, where even if you're a European,
there's a lot of Nigerians that have gone to China for business.
Well, it could be Europeans or Americans also, that the Americans who go to China are doing well and able to send money back. All this interesting data, just I wanted to increase the scholarship level of the people who watch my streams and have facts. So no matter how you side on these opinions, it's better to have facts. Number of refugees by major countries in the last few years: Syria, 5 million, more than any other place. Afghanistan's been pumping out refugees for 20 years now. Somalia, Congo, Sudan, but Syria's overtaken them all in the last few years.
Yeah.
Host countries, I guess, where they're going to. Turkey's the biggest recipient of them.
Hello.